Let's take a little look through Tim Challies' ways that if Solomon's fool had invented a social media platform, it probably would have been Twitter, as a bit of an encouragement to be mindful of how we participate in social media, but more than that, how we can grow in wisdom by not being a fool. Here we go. Number 1, the fool's social media would encourage its users to speak often. Proverbs 10:19, when words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent.
One of the negatives we've come to learn happens through blogs and through other forms of social media is that we can be very quick to speak and very slow to listen.
That's the sound my phone makes. I don't know what yours does, but you fire it off, especially without taking some time to ponder what you're trying to articulate. Congratulations. You're using a fool's device, and you yourself are being a fool. Number 2, the fool's social media would provide the context in which a person could destroy himself through hasty, ill-considered words. Why? The one who guards his mouth protects his life. He who opens wide his lips comes to ruin.
You've got to be very careful that you're avoiding sharing things that are sinful, things that are gossipy. Information moves so quickly on the internet, and particularly through social media. It's important to be thoughtful. It's important to think carefully about what you're posting, what the ramifications could be.
Talk a lot, you're just bound to get in trouble. And trouble these days is what is brewing in social media world. You can be canceled in a heartbeat. You can be lied about. You can be slandered. You can lose your job. You can lose your reputation, all because... Number 3, from Tim Challies, the fool's social media would emphasize the quantity of people its users follow rather than the quality. Quote, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. This is not to suggest we don't enter into social media territory, but when we do, we need to be the ones with wisdom, because most likely, especially if you're dealing with unbelievers, you're dealing with fools. And that means we are called up to be higher and smarter, and be careful how much time we spend in the land of fools. Number 4, the fool's social media would cause its users to interact with foolish people rather than only wise people. Proverbs 26:4, answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. If you are compiling a list of people who are not wise because they do not possess the fear of the Lord, you're just going to go down, down, down. Number 5, from Tim Challies, the fool's social media would make it impossible to ignore the voice of the fool. Leave the presence of a fool, for there you do not meet words of knowledge.
There will be fruit in your life based on your words that you'll have to eat. In other words, you're going to have to live with what your mouth's been doing. You're going to have to live with it. Whether you've been spreading life or whether you've been spreading death, the fruit, you're going to have to eat the fruit of it.
Social media makes it possible to ignore the voice of the fool. Why? Because the internet is composed of a whole lot of foolishness. Question, how much time are you spending in the company of fools? Number 6, from Tim Challies, the fool's social media would encourage wise people to spend time responding to foolish people. Do not speak in the hearing of a fool, for he will despise the good sense of your words. Perhaps you're thinking, well, then how are they to become wise if we just ignore them? How? Because the Proverbs are balanced. There is a time to ignore. There is a time to engage. The encouragement with this particular proverb, and remember, you need to take them in totality, not just pick and choose as you see fit. That will make you very unbalanced and probably pretty foolish yourself. But this particular proverb is warning us, be careful, be careful, be careful. If you speak into the life of a fool, you might get hurt in response. Number 7 way that we can be foolish, the fool's social media would allow its users to witness other people's disputes and arguments so they can join the fray. Love this. Whoever meddles in a quarrel not his own is like one who takes a passing dog by the ears. When we jump into the fray, a quarrel that is not our own, because I gotta tell them. I gotta speak truth to this situation. If I just write this, well then that's gonna just resolve everything. Be careful. You could be grabbing a dog by the ears. And this is Hebrew, you're probably gonna get messed up, Jack or Jill. The number 8 way, the fool's social media would emphasize back and forth communication and arguments. If a wise man, says the Proverbs, has an argument with the fool only rages and laughs. There is no quiet.
The word polemic means a controversial argument where people begin to attack each other over the issue. Oh, wow. Have you seen any of that? Where people begin to attack, they move from the issue and they attack the person. That's polemic.
That is Twitter, isn't it? Ask yourself the question, have you ever seen, not just experienced, but actually seen somebody go, you know what? You're right. Thank you for the wisdom that you just shared with me. I'm going to change my position. I'm never going to be a fool again. Does not happen. Why? Because the device itself doesn't lend itself to actually any genuine communication and conversation. It's just a tit-for-tat machine. In other words, it's the social media platform of fools. Number 9, the fool's social media would make success with the platform dependent upon responding to others, responding hastily, and responding without the social cues that come through hearing a person's voice or seeing a person's face. Quote, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger.
Very easy to criticize somebody when that's just an abstract entity out there in this kind of fake world called cyberspace. Often communication is much better when it's face-to-face and we can focus on one another, we can communicate back and forth.
When you hear somebody talking, you pick up on what they're trying to lay down, and when you are on the internet just doing a little clackety-clackety-clack, you can't catch that, which means you might misunderstand or be misunderstood, and bang, bang, bang is the result. Number 10. The fool's social media would permit no cooling down period between receiving an insult and responding to it. Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who is a hasty temper exalts folly. Somebody says something, does something, and that little thermostat inside of you just goes bing, and you are red hot, and you've got to respond, and you've got to let them have a little hoo, 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 hoo. That is the way of the fool. Number 11 from Tim Challies, the fool's social media would convince people to signal their virtue in a very public kind of way. Quote, all the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirit. Before we engage online, gotta ask ourselves a question about motivation. What is prompting me to do this? Am I maybe showing off? Am I maybe thinking a little bit more highly of myself than I ought? Number 12, the fool's social media would be addictive to keep its users coming back, even when they feel the desire to break away, like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool who repeats his folly. Have you tried to break the Twitter habit, the Instagram habit, the Facebook habit, and you find yourself justifying ways to get back? You be on it if you choose to. That's not the point. What the proverb is getting at is the desire to return to being foolish. Number 13 from Tim Challies, the fool's social media would focus on interpersonal communication rather than communicating facts. So it would be easy to rebuke or belittle other people. Quote, whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense. but a man of understanding remains silent.
Right now, it seems that everyone has decided the issues are so big and so critical. The goal now is not humility. Humility's off the table. There's no place for humility. That'll never get done. The goal now is to humiliate the opponent.
Tell me the Proverbs aren't loaded with counterintuitive thinking. There's a reason for that. Our thinking in our fallen state is still kafritz. It is headed on the wrong path, and we need something extraordinary to get us off the path of foolishness and walking more on the road of wisdom. Number 14 from Challies, the fool's social media would be prone to expressions of vanity and to repeating the praise of others. Let another praise you and not your own mouth, a stranger and not your own lips. Consequence number 1 of studying the book of Proverbs is, first of all, a recognition, wow, Solomon, inspired by the Holy Spirit, was wiser in one proverb than I am in every aspect of my life. Number 2, I am nowhere near where I should be in controlling myself, thinking rightly, being motivated correctly, and that should produce the fruit of humility. The fool's social media would tend toward inactivity rather than productivity. As a door turns on its hinges, so does a sluggard on his bed.
They don't get anywhere because they never get off the dime. They never hit go. They never cross the starting line. They don't respond to the gun. We get the point already. They just sit, but they talk a big game. If you know somebody like that, you can point them to the way of the sluggard, and you can start to show them, you keep this up, this is where you're headed, guaranteed.
The internet invites sluggishness. It's not real productivity to be doing this all day. When we do, we are acting like a sluggard. We are behaving like a fool. Number 16, the fool's social media would prioritize people with a large following ahead of people who have gained great wisdom. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. Number 17, the fool's social media would emphasize what is shocking and outrageous ahead of what is true and good and pure, like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, I'm only joking. Wow, do I feel that? Hey, I know I did this, but just kidding. Oh boy, that's behaving like a fool. That is one we might need to be tagging our kids on. Yep, joking is fine, but when we use it as a license to be nasty, we're behaving like a fool. More from Challies. The fool's social media would make no qualitative distinction between opinions and wisdom. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. So often the internet, don't we do that? We want to learn something and you pick the one for whatever reason, visuals, a particular word pops out, something was in all caps, and we barely scratch the surface, but that's enough for us to think that we're wise on a subject and then let the world know our poorly informed thought. Number 19 from Tim Challies, the fool's social media would emphasize the hasty spread of rumors and gossip ahead of the much slower spread of verifiable facts. For lack of wood and fire goes out, and where there is no whisperer, quarreling ceases. Hoofda, does that ever describe social media and you and me if we aren't thinking when we're using it? Number 20, that's right, 20. The fool's social media would incentivize responding to insults with zingers. The vexation of a fool is known at once, but the prudent ignores an insult. And finally, number 21, the fool's social media would encourage rash words instead of well-considered words. There is one whose rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Humility is but one fruit. There is a second fruit that can be born from studying the book of Proverbs. Yep, while trying to understand what a real wise person actually looks like, it not only should create a great deal of humility, but it should cause us to run to the one who is the fount filled with the riches of all wisdom and knowledge, and learn from him. Who was the least foolish man on the planet? It was not Solomon. He turned out to be a really big fool. He didn't heed much or any of his own advice, but Jesus Christ was thoroughly wise, and he is the one that is the fount of all knowledge. And when you and I study him more and more and more, not only can we be constantly forgiven for our pursuit of foolishness when we should be wise, but we will grow not only in wisdom, but in love with our Savior, who is the complete package of all riches, of all wisdom, and all knowledge.
When I first found out I was pregnant, I remember the day. I have a 23-year-old. I don't want to do this all over again. And when I'm sitting there, the lady is giving me my ultrasound. When I first seen him, I was just like, can you tell if it's a boy or a girl? That's what I wanted to know. I was excited. Then she's like, it's 2. There was a difference. The girl was showing me my babies and everything on the monitor. I got to see it from my own eyes. Yeah, I'm happy now.